Well, welcome everyone to this week's Communication Across the Curriculum or CAC discussion. This is a very special meeting today. We welcome Penny Watson, who's professor of political science government at HCC. And her topic is Iran's grand strategy in Latin America. And it's such a special meeting because Penny was a student here years ago and also was an adjunct here for a while, worked in the Right Place,
really familiar as I go
the Writing Center, and it's an honor to welcome you back as a colleague. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate getting to be here today. It is really such an honor and a privilege to be here, having gotten my AA here, and I think I had 4 or 5 classes with Dr. Heckelman.
Well, just 2.
No, because I took the other, not just the English classes, I took the food and feasting,
Oh, that's
and
right.
everything I could take with you, I took with you.
When you find your favorite
It was
professor, you take all courses.
He's definitely served as a wonderful mentor.
Well, thank you, but go ahead.
So I appreciate that. So it probably seems like a unique topic for me to have selected, right? I mean, I don't think you look at me and think it's a natural transition. But what happened is I transferred from here up to Sam Houston, and when I went on to get my master's up there, I took some classes in Middle East politics and Iran's foreign policy. And I had a professor that kind of threw the gauntlet out there and said to the whole class, and said, why don't you think about regions or countries and, their relationship with Iran, and think, oh yes, that's fine, and think about, like we'll write papers on that, and then if it's done well enough, we'll do a book together. And I was just very excited by this possibility, so I put myself all in. It didn't end up working out, but mine did turn into an article. So that was published in a peer-reviewed journal, and I was very excited by this. And then that actually grew into my master's thesis. And then when I was defending that, they suggested another article, so I did another article. And then I was contacted recently this summer to write a book chapter with a group of people worldwide over extra-hemispheric powers in Latin America. And so I'm writing the chapter on Iran. And so the editors are from Georgetown University, and it's with Routledge Press, so it's pretty good. So I was excited by this. And I'm going to be speaking at a conference, the ISA conference in Morocco, over the summer. So I'm excited. So it's an interesting topic because you wouldn't really think that Iran is going to be in Latin America. They're not exactly neighbors. They're separated by quite a bit of water. However, the relationship isn't as unlikely as it seems. So it has its foundations in just something as simple as OPEC. Right? So initially, it starts off on this level of just organization, just to represent oil groups, right? So simple thing. This just shows the different countries that are involved in it and when they join. But this was kind of the start of a relationship. Now, this is in the 1960s. It doesn't become, really much more until after Khomeini comes to power, because if you think about it, at this time, leader in Iran is Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, Reza Shah Pahlavi, sorry. And so he had close ties to the U.S. So because of that, there's not going to be any types of, he's really kind of perceived in a way as a puppet of the U.S. So he was doing what the U.S. wanted. But things changed in Latin America as well. So what you can see, it's very interesting. There's been what they call the pink tide. So really began Chavez with 1999 in Venezuela. So he comes into power, and that's the start of this pink tide, this big movement. And so these are leftist leaders, leftist and Marxist leaders that come to power. So we get this in such a variety of countries, and they're very anti-imperialist. So they have different motivations for their relationship with Iran than what Iran has with them. But it's a mutually beneficial relationship. There's no point where one group is misusing the other or taking advantage of the other. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. So Latin American countries are looking to kind of counter the hegemony of the US, right? So it's this anti-imperialist idea, and they just kind of go, we can form a coalition of countries, we can all be united, and it serves as it's a method of soft balancing. So that's their method, right? That's their ideas with this. Iran, it's a little bit different. So in 1979, we have the revolution in Iran, right? So Islamic fundamentalism comes in, and Khomeini comes to power. So there's not a lot of relationship at that time. There isn't. So it takes a while. And so then under Khamenei, and 2005 is really where I kind of start really seeing a big push for Iran into Latin America. And so that's kind of the period that we're going to focus on, is from 2005 forward, what happens. So 2005, you've got Supreme Leader is Khamenei. And one of the things we need to understand is we think of the leader of a country as a president, but it's not like that in Iran. So there is a president, but he does not have that level of power. The real power is vested in the Supreme Leader, although it is an oligarchy, right? So you've got the Supreme National Security Council, you have the Supreme Leader, you have the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and you have the president, and they're all involved in this process. The power dispersal can depend on the Supreme Leader, and there's factional differences that occur depending on kind of where they are within the party itself, right? So we can think about it, I shouldn't even say party, it's really factions. So Islamic fundamentalists, it's far right? These leaders are far left. So that's why it's really interesting to kind of see that there would be a relationship. But within Islamic fundamentalism, you still get differences, right? It's not like everybody's the same. So you've got the hardliners, you've got the reformists, you've got the moderns. There's different groups. So there's different dispersals of power within that when they're making their decisions, right? So when we have 2005 and we've got Khamenei in power, and you've got Ahmadinejad as president, right? Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. And so they really kind of get along. So Ahmadinejad's given a lot of power by the Supreme Leader. And he has kind of a similar personality to Chavez in a way, some of that you both use incendiary rhetoric, and they just formed a strong bond, right? So we start getting this relationship, Iran and Venezuela, and that's really where it starts. So then what happens is Chavez starts introducing him to the other guys, right? So as these changing tides happen and somebody gets elected, I'd like to introduce you to my good friend here, you know? So during inaugurations, Ahmadinejad would go and he would be introduced, and then they would develop relations. So it was kind of the start in. So this went on, and they all got very close. So you can see, and despite changing leadership, even within these countries, because Chavez had a very strong relationship with Iran. But even though he was replaced by Maduro, that relationship has still stayed very, very strong. But you look and you go like Brazil, who had Lula, where they were very close and had tight relations, was replaced by Rousseff, and then you get Temer, and of course now Bolsonaro, who's very Trump of the tropics is what they kind of call him. So now there's been a movement away from Iran and the relationships. But So Dilma Rousseff, although close to Iran, was not close the same way Lula was. Let's see, Ortega was very close. And we're starting to see, let's see, Ecuador was very close, Bolivia, Evo Morales, very, very close. So let's see, and you can see how this has changed to now. So you can see with the election that the pink tide has waned. And so although you have it still in some countries, right, like Argentina, most of the countries have now moved from these leftist or Marxist mentalities, and they've adopted new leadership that is actually more right. And so that is going to change the relationships. The question, though, becomes, will those leaders be able to stay in power? Because there is a lot of turnover in some of these Latin American countries. So, all right. So one of the things I argue are these four contending explanations. There's existing explanations for why Iran is in Latin America. We know Iran's there. Why? So one of the arguments is social justice solidarity. This idea that Iran is in Latin America because oppressed groups should stick together. So, you know, it's this idea that you're being oppressed, the US is this imperialist, so we have this anti-imperialist ideas, we should join together. However, there's some counters to that. Okay, so in these countries, these Latin American countries, leftist and Marxists. So Iran doesn't sit there and say, well, we support all leftists and Marxists, because in their own country, you had the Reign of Terror in 1981, where they executed 12,000 leftists and Marxists, followed by the massacre of 1988, second Reign of Terror, where another 5,000 leftists and Marxists were killed. A lot of these were students that had been in prison. So we can't sit there and say, well, it's in support of leftists and Marxists because they've just been executed. Evo Morales, 2009, declared himself socialist, declared himself a Marxist. He said that that was what he was. He said, you know, if I'm a socialist, I'm a Marxist. If you want, you can kick me out of the OAS, you know. And he said he was just declaring himself that way. And yet, Iran has super strong ties with Morales, right? So that doesn't explain it. It can't be about social justice solidarity. So the next one is anti-Israel realists. So there's this idea that Iran is in this geopolitical competition with Israel, right? In the Middle East, you know, in Africa, you know, all over. But if that was the case, it would make much more sense for them to align with Arabs and Muslims. That would make more sense. But that's not what's going on. So, and you think about that at the time, President Ahmadinejad made comments about that just denouncing the Holocaust. And Castro had said that, you know, how can you deny the Holocaust? How can you deny the Holocaust? Jews have been oppressed. Nobody has been more vilified than the Jews. No one's, you know, no one's attacking, no one's doing that to the Muslims. And so we can sit there and say that and Latin American countries actually had a decent amount of trade with Israel. So actually their aligning with Iran is actually going against that interest, right? Because there's a tendency for it to be this mentality of an either or, right? You're either with this group or that group, right? You can't, it's hard to balance and go with both. So So anti-Israel realist doesn't really work as a solution. There's the economic explanation, which is really the dominant explanation, is that it's just financially beneficial. There's a lot of trade going on, they're big trade partners. Well, the thing is they're not really. So it accounts for about 2.6%, hold on, of the trade. So if we look at things like imports and exports, that's not really accounting for it. And instead, when we're looking at increased involvement, we're seeing it in other areas. I'm going to come back to this. Hold on, let's see. You can look. When you look and you see where Iran is in the map and where Latin America is, that's not a convenient distance to transport goods, right? So you think about, so they get a lot of beef from Brazil, okay? Well, they also produce their own beef. They at times do this in detriment to their own people, some of the things that are important. They could procure beef from Pakistan, which is a much closer location. But there was a ban. They had placed a ban on that beef. They had placed a ban on trade with Brazil as well, but they removed the ban on trade with Brazil. So if you remove the ban for one, why not do it for the one that's much closer? Sugar. Iran's one of the top producers of sugar. Yet they imported huge amounts of sugar from Brazil at great cost. Why would you import something that you're a big top producer of when neighboring countries are also top producers and you could get that at a close location? Why would you do it at a great cost to yourself? The other thing is they lowered the tariffs on these products, which harmed the Iranian people. So why would you do that? Well, you're going to do that if there's additional benefit to you, some other benefit that you're getting. So a lot of times when they look at these figures and they say, okay, we can show by these figures that there's been increased trade, right? That there's a lot of trade going on. What they do is they include a lot of these MOUs or cooperation agreements. These things that really skew the figures and are things that don't actually come to fruition, right? They don't promise each other a lot of money. I promise to invest in your South Pars oil field. I promise to invest in this. We're going to build houses. We're going to do this. And then it doesn't actually materialize in a lot of ways. So when they include those, it makes it seem as if the trade is so much greater than what it actually is. So we can say that that one's not it. So the explanation that remains is countering the United States. So the US is a hegemonic presence. I know it's a strong word to use, but that's what it is. And the US has a history of regime change. The US has a history of imposing its will on other countries. I mean, Iran's desire to have a nuclear weapon in order to be able to just secure its own borders, be able to secure to have that bit of security, right? Because extended deterrence isn't a thing, right? Even under the Shah, they were wanting that, right? There's video of the Shah saying that, that he did not feel that the US was going to keep him safe if it came down to that a nuclear weapon would be beneficial for Iran to have. And so this has been a long quest. Well, now nuclear weapon would offer legitimacy to a regime that does not have a lot of support. So, how do you do that? Well, these Latin American countries are very rich in mineral resources that go into making nuclear power, nuclear energy, any type of it. mines, right? So they have vast resources of uranium, of thorium, tantalum, right? That goes into the electronics aspect, right? There's mines of it. And Iran has been mining in these sites. We know that. That's part of what's been going on. They also have terrorist training camps in some of these countries, like Venezuela. Margarita Island. Let me see if I go back to my map here. Margarita Island, which is with Venezuela up there at the top. So, one of the largest outposts of Hezbollah, right? And it's like, okay, well, that's Lebanese Hezbollah. But they answer to the supreme leader. So when we think about how we're going to counter, well, part of it is the soft balancing. Part of it is just the fact that you establish these alliances with these other countries that also have these anti-imperialist attitudes. And just by being this group together, you're able to prevent regime change, right? And it has been effective because there have been times where the US would have liked to do regime change, or where even we could even look and say, currently, Maduro is still in power in Venezuela. Why is he still in power? Partially because Iran has backed him. China's backed him, Russia's backed him, and Cuba's backed him. That's why he's still holding on. These alliances have been powerful tools, right, that have benefited both groups. So we can also sit there and think about, well, does Iran have to think about regime change? Yes, they do. Why? Because it's happened before. We have gone in and removed their leader from power before. We have done this. We removed Mossad from power. We removed him. He was democratically elected by the people. He nationalized oil there. Britain wasn't happy, we weren't happy, so we removed him, right? MI6 and the CIA went in and removed him during Eisenhower, right? So 1953. So he's removed from power, and what happens? We put the Shah back in. And so then he's seen as a puppet, and that leads to really kind of the revolution in 1979. So for Iran, the threat of regime change is a real threat. And then you look and you go, they've seen it with Saddam Hussein being removed. That's not ancient history. So feeling this need to have either weaponry or alliances to be able to hold on to power doesn't seem such an unreasonable idea. Let's see.
Do you have any figures that are handy on the number of Hezbollah on Margarita Island or throughout Latin America, the number of Iranian operatives?
So that's, okay, so we know that in Venezuela, so Iran went in and they set up embassies. All those black dots on that one map are showing the embassies that are set up. And so they have over 150 diplomats at the one in Venezuela, which is really a high amount of diplomats. So the idea, the theory is that they're not actually all diplomats. So an interesting thing with Venezuela is, like I said, Venezuela and Iran have had a very, very tight relationship. So they've worked together on even making unmanned drones. They also had flights via, so Iran Air and Conviasa, right? Conviasa is a Venezuelan airline, so that's government owned. And these planes actually flew back and forth between Caracas and Tehran, and also through Damascus. And these flights, oh, and the other thing is when they did these embassies, most of these countries have said, Iranians do not need to have any type of visas or anything. They don't have to have documentation to come. They can just come. So they're not being checked in any way. Okay, so now with Venezuela, it was really interesting. So these flights between, like, say, Conviasa, these flights between Tehran, Damascus, and Caracas, they don't go through customs. No civilians are on these flights. But somebody's on these flights. So we know that there are people being moved back and forth, right? The assumption is we're talking about a lot of Hezbollah, a lot of IRGC, Quds Force, which is like the IRGC abroad, kind of, right? So that these are the people that are there. These are the people that are going back and forth. There's been weapons going back and forth. They found traces of like uranium on one of the planes. There was some radioactive materials, things like that. So these flights enabled Iran to transport, or Venezuela to transport, anything they wanted back and forth without being really monitored in any way. Because these were government agencies without any type of customs and no documentation. Makes it pretty interesting, right?
So which is the country that has the most activity?
Venezuela.
That's it, that's the top.
Yep.
And then after that?
So we're going to start seeing changes because the change in leadership in these countries, this shift is going to change that relationship, right? So because we can say, well, Bolivia, right? Large, very strong relationship as well, but that's not there anymore, right? So then you go, does it shift ties? Do they become closer to Argentina, who still has leftists? We'll see. I'm not sure if Bolsonaro is going to be able to hold on to power in Brazil. It seems like there's not as much support. And you can look and say, Evo Morales, he's in Mexico, but he's still kind of having sway inside his own country. So it's exciting and it's interesting to see what's going on in these countries. But yeah, so we don't have hard numbers of how many people are there. It's very hard to measure how many operatives are. We know that there's operatives, we knew that there was 20 back in 2012 in Brazil. We don't know, but we don't really know now. We don't have hard numbers. It's very hard to get. Let's see. So another factor is ALBA. So these countries, right, in Latin America formed ALBA, right? So the Bolivarian Alliance for the People of America. So this is founded by Hugo Chavez, Venezuela. Once again, like I said, Venezuela has really been a key player. So these 10 member countries have all united. And they're very powerful as a bloc. And Iran has good relations with them, has had good relations with them. So we know that there have been training camps for terrorist organizations like Hezbollah. They have been set up in several of these countries. We know that they were actually training in Bolivia. They set up a training camp and they were actually training members of ALBA in asymmetric warfare. So
What would that be, asymmetric warfare?
it's going to be that it is the type like what Hezbollah does, where they're able to go in. They can just conduct, they can go in, they can take action, and they can get out. You're not associated with country. They've done. So they've even got ties with some of the drug cartels, even with Mexico. So they tried to get them to assassinate the Saudi ambassador to the U.S., Los Zetas. They tried to get that drug cartel to assassinate the U.S. The Saudi ambassador in the U.S. I mean, so there's some interesting ties that go on that we see. We don't have all the information, obviously, but
Can I ask you a question?
of course.
I don't see any reason behind what you're saying. Any proof that, any indication that they did this. Or mostly are claim without any evidence.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I can show you the sites, like the. I mean,
I don't say
this is
this
documented.
happened or not happened, but I don't see any proof that you're saying for this reason, they
But
are.
So, I mean, I don't have like all the sites on me, but like we have proof that Hezbollah is in Latin America. We have proof that they're in Venice, that they're on Marguerite Island. We have proof of the training camps.
Well, training camps can be training the militias rather than you use the word terrorist. I mean, terrorist is a very harsh word. Not a single Iranian has been involved in terrorist activities.
No, they use Hezbollah.
Well, that might be the case. That might be the case. But what I'm saying is that terrorists, they are actually trained militia. I'll make a joke about Morsi. Mohammed Morsi, do you know Mohammed Morsi from the president of Egypt that was toppled by CIA coup d'etat, and now, what is his name? The guy is in the power. Mohammed Morsi came to Tehran and stood in Tehran and dissed all Iranian and left, insulted all the Iranians and left. And the reason is because those Arab countries, they paid him to do that. Now I'll make a joke about that. I said, if Mohammed Morsi would have came to Iran and at least respected Iranian, he would have been still in power in Egypt because the Iranian would put his support behind him. But he came to Tehran and insulted the Iranian regime and left. And when the CIA went to topple him, and the Iranians said, well, it's not my business. But if they would have aligned with Iran, probably would have been in power. And what you say about Venezuela and
Maduro?
And Chavez, absolutely correct. The Iranians are teaching them probably how to use the militia in order to control the crowds and so forth and so on. There are a couple of comments I want to make. That Evo Morales was forced to flee the country because they said the election was illegitimate.
Right, because
and
he
the
was running
US
for-
government was involved in it. But now they admitted the election was legit and he actually won the election.
But it was for a fourth term, and you're not allowed to serve a fourth term there. That's why he's not allowed to have the office.
Well, allowed or not allowed, they removed him because they say he rigged the election. But now they admit. You see, what the U.S. does is that they go take an action and they just control the outcome of it. They go do whatever they want, like killing the Soleimanis of Iran. They say, we're going to kill him, and then we control the things after that. And they're doing it. That's fine. By the way, another comment I want to make about Shah of Iran. Shah of Iran was removed from Iran by US and Israel because Shah of Iran was opposing the Israel hegemony, they use it in the region. And there is a taping of that.
Yes. But then he's put back
That's what
in by the
we-
U.S. when he agrees to toe the line and go along with the U.S. He's put back into power.
I'm talking about in 1979.
Oh, okay, yes.
In
right,
1979. That's why Khomeini came in Iran with fanfare. He came with Air France and all that. You have seen the famous picture.
He came in because the people were against the fact that he was perceived as a puppet of the U.S. The people did not support
That
that.
is correct. The people uprised because
Yeah,
they felt that.
Yes, the people
But
did not
also,
support
U.S.
him.
helped Khomeini to Iran to make
Yes.
sure that Iran doesn't fall in the hand of Soviet Union.
Yes.
So again, Iran was sacrificed again
Mhm.
for the interest of the United States.
Yes. I agree with you.
Okay.
No, the U.S. has had a very heavy hand in their involvement in Iran. I'm not at any point saying that it is that those have been justifiable actions.
And all those leftists that they were killed in Iran, how many you said, 12,000?
There was 12,000 during '81, and then another 5,000 in '88.
people in the U.S. were sitting there and cheering because they were pro-Soviet. Those leftist
I know.
people, they're all pro-Soviet. So,
I know.
So anyway,
I know the Red Scare for the U.S. is
Yeah.
it's so strong that willing to look at an atrocity as a positive. I don't know. I don't condone that. I don't agree with that.
I talked to another friend of us in a school, and he said, I told him that U.S. uses the excuse of interest to go and create mayhem in other countries. Now, I'm going to ask you at the end of your talk, is there a better way to do that? Instead of causing millions to die, like toppling Honduras government because of the banana company couldn't sell its bananas anymore. Is there any other way to do this rather than causing so much havoc? Even though Trump sits down and brags about selling all those arms to cow, the cash cows of the Saudis. I mean, is there any other better way to do it? Go ahead, continue, and then we'll come back to that.
Yeah, I hope there is. I certainly hope that there's a better way. All right, so I have this up about Hezbollah, right? So it's party of Allah, party of God. Right? So it's Lebanese Hezbollah. However, because of ideology, they answer to the Supreme Leader. So what the Supreme Leader says, Hezbollah is going to do. So we know Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. And Hezbollah is in numerous countries, very heavily in Latin America. So this is a factor, right? We know IRGC is there. Like I said, Quds Force. They've worked with FARC. They've worked with other groups within Venezuela, other groups that are there. So Hezbollah is, in my opinion, a concern. You know, anytime you're talking about a terrorist group that is very close proximity to the United States. But honestly, a terrorist group anywhere is a concern, right? So what is the purpose of having it there? So you could sit there and say, well, having control or a group that's a strong military presence in U.S.'s backyard serves as a possible counter if the U.S. tries to assert itself in regime change. If the U.S. tries to put itself too far forward in Persian Gulf activities. It enables them to have a way to counter. Do I think that they're going to be sending Hezbollah up to the United States to come attack? No. Do they have terrorist cells here? Yes. We have found terrorist cells even in North Carolina. So we know that that's a fact. But there's a lot of groups that have that, right? I think the presence in Latin America is serving as a way to counter, a way to serve also for them to keep power. And it does present a certain amount of legitimacy internally. All right, so this I thought I would show you because I thought this was really interesting, is in Latin America, Iran has a TV station. That's interesting, isn't it? Okay, because why would you need a TV station? Well, multiple. So they actually teach Persian language. They teach about Persian culture. They teach about what's going on in Iran, right? They teach this whole perspective.
Can
Yes.
I ask, is that correct?
What?
It's called Hispan?
Yes.
That's really close to, okay, never mind.
What? No, please.
I'm just,
Is that derogatory word?
no, I'm just, nothing.
No, please say. I was just going to click on it for
Oh,
you.
no, that's okay, go ahead.
No, that's true. That TV station, I'm not sure it's called Hispan TV, but it does exist, and they have a lot of Iranian movies with the subtitle in Spanish.
But Penny,
Oh.
and if you just go on cable, there's German TV,
Yeah.
there's German TV, Korean TV, and so forth. Are you implying that those are political arms of
Yes.
of the government?
Because, so Iran has, like, this is a fairly, this station has been broadcasting for a long time throughout Latin America. So why? Like, what is the goal?
Propaganda.
Yes. Same as, I mean, US does this too. I'm not saying that. But it does serve a function of, if you make people aware of your culture, make people understand your language,
But aren't
then
you-
people are more sympathetic to you
Aren't you
through
s-
understanding.
You're spinning it in a rather extreme way.
Okay.
I mean,
impossible.
all cultural exchange on some level
Mhm.
is ideological.
Mhm.
What is not ideological? But to point out that it's ideological is in a sense not a strong claim, because what is not ideological, right? When I watch German TV, for example, there may be a program which is celebrating something in German culture, something in Germany, not at the expense of any other culture, right? And was that ideological? Yes. Is it weaponized? Not necessarily.
But it could be, depending on the end game. Anything could be, not necessarily is. I'm just saying it opens up a door for it. It opens up a possibility. So, like in Peru, Iran actually had a group of Peruvians that they took back to Iran, trained, and then returned. So, it had its effective conversion, possibly. But if nothing else, what it does is it does make people sympathetic. It just makes you, because when we do have understanding of other cultures, then we're more likely to either say, oh, we should have their side, right? I'm not saying that it's going to make the people in Latin America all become Muslim, that they're all going to say, we think that Iran should have a nuclear weapon, or we think this, but maybe less likely to oppose when your government is already in support of. Because the governments, the leftist governments in Latin America spoke out strongly and said Iran should have nuclear energy. Now, they were talking about peaceful nuclear energy. They didn't say Iran should have a nuclear weapon. It was they should have peaceful nuclear energy.
Well, on Hispan TV, is the newsreader declaiming against the imperialist West? Or what is the rhetoric of what we hear on Hispan TV with respect to, the political dimension vis-a-vis the United States?
There is an anti-imperialist.
There is?
There is, if you look, but that's within the country anyway. So I can't sit there and say that that is because that it is from an Iranian news site, because that's also in line with that country's beliefs anyway. So you can't say which is which, right?
Is it physically located in Venezuela?
This is broadcast throughout. I mean, and like I said, you can just here, hold on.
Is the television station physically located in?
That I'm not exactly sure. I apologize. I'm not sure exactly where it's located. Let's
Oh,
see.
okay.
And I can't connect to that. Let's see.
I was just saying because the word itself, if you just went real quick, you would think it's like Hispanic TV or Hispanic. I would click on it thinking I'm getting ready to. Just because of the
To hear it in
interesting, I'm seeing someone in a particular attire that would lead me to believe I'm going to hear something else, but then I see that wording and I'm thinking, okay, this might cause me to pause momentarily just to listen, and maybe they
Yeah.
did it that way for that intents and purpose being where they were. That's why I was asking.
I had hyperlinked it, but because I don't have the login to be able to connect, so I can't play it to actually show this is the website. But you can look it on there and you can see, like I said, you can learn Persian language, you can learn all about Iran, you can learn all about the culture, you can all of it.
There are also a lot of them on YouTube if you want to research them. Yeah, a lot of them on YouTube.
I just don't want to insult anyone, but I've heard it spoken. I thought, well, that would be really nice to at least be able to say a few phrases. that would not be a language I'd want to insult someone in, so.
But yeah, that was, it's, since I speak Spanish, what I was actually learning Farsi from watching this for a while. So I was like, well, I can go from Spanish to Farsi. So.
Oh, it's that easy of a transition? Oh, I didn't know that,
I'm okay at language.
okay. I do well at language, but I didn't know it
People
would be
have
that
gifts.
easy of
But
a
also
transition.
remember, Persian language is an Indo-European language, is closer to the Spanish and English than Semite language like Arabic that we use.
Oh, okay, okay,
So-
And
okay.
speaking's much easier than writing. I think the writing's really difficult.
You said you can learn Farsi, I can teach you.
That's why it's easy for Spanish speaking to learn because it's
Okay. Oh,
So,
wow.
unfortunately, I'm sorry that that's not playing. Let's see. Where am I now?
Do you want me to come and connect it for you?
Let's see. Oh, sorry. Well, because I was like, I can't do it that way. Let's see if I can. No. Should be.
If you log in, you'll take it, but I don't I thought she did that, so. Oh, she, oh, yeah, she does it right now. Oh, perfect.
So she has to log in on the back.
Absolutely.
I don't see a play.
Oh, there it is.
It is?
It says it's
Yeah.
connected, but it has to tell you that it's internet connected too, so it may take it a second to connect via internet.
We'll see if it'll work now. Okay, there we go. Oh, well, I can see it.
Oh, is it a play?
A few words, I mean, I understand.
Okay, so you all can't see it. Let me see if we do it this way. Yes.
Oh.
I never understand why it has to be done this way, but there it is. Okay, so you can see this is the website. So you can even watch Persian movies.
Oh, there it is.
Oh,
This one,
wow.
programa se llama de-
Yeah, so Grandma, so CC Iran, Islam Responds, Iran Today. So you can, there's like a wide variety of things. Like I said, you can even look at and watch movies. You know, so it's really very cultural. So anybody feels like watching Persian films, here you go.
Wow.
It's pretty cool, right?
What other cultures?
Okay, but some of those are in French and Spanish, so would it be in Farsi or would it be in Spanish
Well,
or
here we-
would it be?
Now the
in-
language is in Farsi, but it has a subtitle.
Should have subtitles for
Oh,
Spanish because it's
okay.
intended for them to be able to.
Okay.
But yeah, let's see.
I haven't seen a situation that has been dubbed in Spanish.
Okay.
My wife watches them.
But see, that's Spanish down there.
Yeah, because
That's
this is
what-
all for all the people in Latin American countries to be able to watch.
Oh, but the
This is-
films themselves would be subtitled in Spanish?
Yes,
That's what
yes,
you're saying.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha, okay.
because they're the
Right,
Persian
because
films
they-
that are just also.
But it would be actually speaking in Farsi, okay.
Should be,
Got it.
yeah.
Oh, that'd be so interesting, okay.
So, yeah. So, so that's just letting you know, this is what you can go and see. All of these things. And it does give you an option, like if you don't happen to speak Spanish, you can actually click, it'll allow you to translate everything into English for you. So yeah, it's a nice option.
Well, just playing devil's advocate, how is this different from, say, what the United States Information Agency provides in other countries?
Okay.
Like Voice of America or
Ah,
BBC
Yeah,
Farsi.
yeah.
Yes, okay, so I do freelance writing for Radio Farda. So and that's paid for by U.S. Congress. So yes, it has a definite slant, right? It does. It's you know pro-U.S., pro-Israel, and the consumption is meant for, well, you know, largely for Iranians, but also for English speakers too, because they have it in both English and Farsi. and Radio Fard is done out of Belgium. So, because I think it's part of Radio Europe, or Radio Free Europe, yeah. So yeah. How is it different? Well, let's see.
I mean, you're presenting this
Right.
as predatory, but I don't think you present the Voice of America as predatory, or would you? It's all ideological.
Yes, well, so Voice of America it's supposed to be informative, right? It's, in Persian, and it's telling about what politics are, primarily here in the U.S. It's primarily notifying, like it's professors primarily saying about U.S. politics, so it's informing them about U.S. politics. There's no, as far as I'm aware of, I don't believe that they teach English or talk about or teach culture, which is different. There's no religion associated with it. So
And
I think
also-
that's kind of the difference.
And also, they are the enemy, so that's another justification of painting it differently.
Well, I guess I'm really pretty much at time, so I've gone all the way almost to 4. So I guess I could just answer questions if that's okay.
Sure, whatever.
Okay. It's like, call it.
What is the solution out of this mayhem and all this situation? What is the solution out of it? What do you think?
I have no idea. So in terms of, can the U.S. pursue peaceful relations with Iran?
Well, they
No.
tried 2015 and
Yes.
nuclear pact, and as soon as Trump came in and they tore it up. I mean,
But
one
Iran
side-
wasn't sticking to the JCPOA.
He wasn't.
No. That was the problem, is there were violations of the
But
JCPOA.
IAEA was saying that they were.
IAEA was not being allowed into certain sites.
You see, that's
and-
another thing. That's another thing. Anytime the United Nations is involved, everything that they do, we don't like it, we say, you are not doing it. Everything that we do, well, we are sticking to the program, like any other United Nations resolutions. Those that are against us, when I say us means American, we don't like it, but whatever is for us, we enforce it.
I read something saying that Iran actually tried to procure some materials over in Germany and were stopped.
Again-
So that was during,
Again,
and that was released by their government.
Again, there are a lot of hands in this country on the far right that they are directly connected to the foreign governments, that they do all this. They are trying to get United States involved in another war in that region that there is no end to it. As I said, Afghanistan and Iraq, look at it. They have created mayhem and there is no end to it. And let me preface this. All the countries in the region are trying to get their heads above the water, all of them, without exception. Okay? But, I mean,
But in,
Iran has been, go ahead.
in Syria, they solved the Syrian problem.
But like Syria, for example, see what happened there. Syria, before uprising, United States ambassador was in the city of Aleppo, was promising support to opposition, and they said, you uprise, we help you. But they didn't know what kind of mayhem it creates. Turkey has stepped in because of the Qatar paid him, Saudi Arabia, United Arab paid him, but they didn't know if Turkey could not imagine that the Kurdish uprising might happen. See, it has created mayhem in that region. How can we get out of it?
Syria's been a mess. Syria's been a country that's been in turmoil because of a multitude of countries, including Iran and Russia, trying to exert their authority over the country. So you end up with ethno-sectarian wars occurring within a country.
Again, you are looking at the present, but go back, look at it. How did it start? They were trying to take down Bashar al-Assad because they failed to take down Hezbollah and they couldn't deal with the Iran. So they said, well, we're gonna go attack it in the weakest point. Look what happened. Iranian government were begging Saudis and Qataris, hey, let's invite me in, let's sit down and negotiate that. And the same United States ambassador, Saudi foreign minister, whoever that was at the time, said, this is an Arab issue, you stay out of it, it's none of your business. How come Palestinian is not an Arab issue, but the Syria is an Arab issue? You see, that's what I don't understand. That's what I don't understand. Now, these are all being Iranian government, as you said, have been using anti-American sentiment in the country to suppress all the opposition. Every time a group of people rise, oh, you're American, you're Israelis, you're so on, he kills everybody. It reminds me always that Rodney King, can we all get along? Can we stop these things? Can we, and you say there is no end of it. So let's go bomb that country, be done with it, because another Iraq and another Afghanistan. Because United States hasn't won any war since World War II. They have a very powerful army, they can destroy everything. But what happens the day after? They don't foresee it, or they see it but they don't care.
Right, well, the US was very effective if you're talking about just removing Saddam. We didn't lose very many lives, it was in the nation building. That's where it's gone south, is in the nation building.
Again,
but Iran is
let's go back.
But
Why
Iran
Saddam was removed at all?
But I told you that was because of misunderstanding, because of poor signaling.
No, it was the opposition of Saddam to Israel.
I don't agree with that.
What Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz, they have different opinion on that. The foreign minister of President Bush and I don't know what was that Wolfowitz. I don't know what was the position. The thing is that let me go back. Every country in that, as I said, they are trying to get their heads above. And those who are thinking like Iranian Ahmadinejad, he said about Holocaust, he made that comment, but he doesn't think that, hey, you cannot remove the entire country from the region. You cannot go and wipe out the entire nation. You cannot do that. And Israel is there to stay. Okay?
And yet they've said how many times, they even wrote on a missile that they were going to completely annihilate Israel.
And all their propaganda.
It is. It's to control internally as well.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
It
but
is.
The thing is that those people who think that they can remove Israel from there, first of all, they're dreaming. Second, Israel has the same right as everybody else in that region to stay there. The right of existence of Israel in that region is no more nor less than Jordan and Syria and Lebanon. These are all countries that were created after Ottoman Empire. But the Israel was held off. That's why probably, to my opinion, is a root of madness a little bit. Like creation of Israel was the solution to anti-Israeli sentiment in England. If you look at the literature, you can see that England want to deal with his Jewish problem. That's why they created the country of Israel over there, to move all these Jewish people over there. But that said, they should have created Israel when in 1914, 1915, after the World War II, that region broke up. But again, that said, Israel is there to stay, and whoever says otherwise is cuckoo, is dreaming.
So, do the people of Iran, let's say, do the people of Iran, and I'm sorry, I had class, and I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Oh, Penny, by the way, do you have time?
Yes.
So do the people of Iran, so one of the things that we hear, and I do think there's propaganda, but I think that if we allowed people to truly choose their own governments, or if we allowed countries to choose how they want to behave in their region of the world, one of the big conversations that happened while Saddam Hussein was still in rule was that, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but I'm just saying the conversation was that he kept the Sunnis and the Kurds and the Shia in his country, like they had kind of a third segregation in each country, but because he ruled everyone with an iron fist,
under control.
I'm not saying I agree with that, I'm just saying that was an observation, right?
That
And
is true.
and then part of that perception is too, like the mullahs and some of the people keep the Iranian people, and I'm asking you for your,
No,
so if you
she
just
mentioned
let
that.
people.
She mentioned that the 90% of Iranians don't like the, I don't think it's 90-10, probably 60-40 maybe,
Okay.
It's
or
not.
90-10. It's higher than that?
I think so. I think the lowest is, I would say, is probably 80.
80-20,
But so
so
at least
80% of the
80% of
people in
people
the United
don't
States
support
don't like
it.
the regime that, I mean, in Iran, they don't like the regime that
Do
they
not
have.
support the regime.
Yeah.
So
But
they
the
would,
regime that the 20% is controlling the other 80%. Is that what you say that?
yeah, yes,
But at
yes.
some point, if
So
you allowed the countries in the region, in other words,
if they could have a free and fair election, this is not the government they would choose. These are not the leaders they would choose. They don't have a say. And the people have taken to the streets. Iranians have been protesting. I mean, you go back to even Green Revolution, and that was squashed, right? I mean, and they've been protesting this whole past year. They've been protesting over and over again, and they've been being killed by the government, by the IRGC, shooting into the crowds, killing people.
But it's, okay, and I
To
understand
suppress
what
it.
you're saying, I understand what you're saying. But on a higher level, less granular, but a higher level, if the Western nations, let's just say, if the United States just said, okay, whatever happens, happens, and we will definitely withdraw from it. And I'm not saying that actually shouldn't happen, by the way, right? I don't think nation building works.
No, I don't
Because
either.
the problem is that you never keep the same administrations in our country, and our policy changes, and it wrecks people's lives in other countries because the policy changed. But what would you do if Persia, if Iran, right, could say, this is what we want, and what if part of that was to go to war with one of her neighbors? Or what if Iraq wanted to go to war with Iran? Or that, you know, how does, if you just say hands off, how do we let that war, that
No.
happen?
If I understand you correctly, I'm not saying total hands off. There has to be deterrence there, okay? But can it be done softer? I mean, because of the war that Saddam started in 1980, Iranian government used that. Actually, by the way, I served in that war. And Iranian government was able to kill all the oppositions, you know, that they, all these leftists and all these things, they killed them all, and or they forced them to leave the country. And the reason that I went to military service is because I wanted to legally leave the country. So in order to have passport, you have to go to your duty and all these things. But anyway, people of Iran, either 80-20, 90-10, 60-40, it doesn't matter. They want to live free. They want to have contact with all the people around the world. But they have a bad taste in the mouth of the United States
Yes,
policy in that country.
Of course.
That's why they look at, again, Afghanistan is on that right side. They look at Iraq in left side, okay? And they say, well, oh my God, look at these two countries. So we'd rather to be in that miserable situation to not to get bogged in that. Afghanistan has been in war for past 40 years.
Yes.
40 years.
Yes, before us. Yeah.
Soviet Union. Yeah.
So
So
again,
it's-
what do you think should be done?
I think idealistically, hopefully in time, the Iranian people will be able to change the circumstance themselves. Because I think that that's the only way things change meaningfully is from within. If the people, because the people do, if the bulk of the people do not support the government, if they are able to change the government, then that, and then have free, fair elections, then that's going to be the best solution. Unfortunately, that I think that we're looking at a long road of many protests, many years of continued protests, and enough's going to happen till the IRGC is willing to not shoot into the crowd anymore.
Any change in Iran government will be viewed as the hand of the United States in there.
I don't think that.
Even if you thought, even if you thought that it was truly an organic coalition.
The organic will happen eventually, will not happen. And the only way it happens is that the pressure outside of Iran will go down.
Yeah,
Only if the people that they can sit down and think about it, says, okay, now there is no Lulu over there, it's not US over there, so you cannot use that excuse to oppress me. So let's sit down and talk about it. That's the only way. As long as the outside pressure is on Iran, the Iranian regime can use that excuse to dominate people to do that. Now, let me change the direction of the talk. Election is coming up. If Trump is elected, probably his hand will be open to do whatever he wants to do, and he wants to attack Iran.
Yes.
But what if he's defeated? What's going to happen?
And then I think sanctions will be removed, and then
Yeah.
it's going to get real interesting real quick.
In terms of interesting, very quick means
Well, because, okay, so sanctions have a very, if you are not for the fundamentalist regime in Iran, sanctions have a beneficial effect, right? If you're not supportive of the regime, then having the sanctions in place have a very big impact. Why? Because the people are being heavily affected, right? And so that puts pressure on the government. So if we have somebody else that's elected, they're going to take those sanctions off, right? They're not going to be concerned with restraining Iran, especially because Biden is prepared to deal with the nuclear Iran.
But
He
the
is.
behavior,
So-
the Trump action has not changed Iranian behavior. They are changing the strategies.
That actually has, if you think about it. Okay, so look, when President Obama was in, look at how close they were going to the ships. That stopped. Look at, so have we seen an escalation in some ways? Yes. Yes, we have.
are you talking about in rhetorical escalation versus, like you said, the Strait of Hormuz
Yeah.
and those kinds of events happening? Or?
So we're seeing a change in where we're seeing action.
Okay.
But-
Iranian is changing also. The Iranian government is also changing its strategy. By, you see, all these things that happened after the Iran hit the Iraqi base, and things can calm down. So the situation has been diffused. Now Iran is concentrating where he has to concentrate, which is in Syria. So he knows that now it's safe over there, that he doesn't have to worry about it because he showed what he can do. So now he's concentrating in which he is supposed to, and he's beefing up the Bashar al-Assad government, and also told all those little Arab countries across the Persian Gulf that, hey, if you move, I'll move you, by hitting the oil facilities and so forth, so on. He says, this is going to happen if something happens.
But they haven't moved, but since the actions have been taken, they haven't done anything
That's
further.
right. That's right. They haven't done it in the region, but they are concentrating where they are doing it right now.
But what I'm saying is, there's only so much, they're being allowed a free hand to an extent. How much is Trump really going to sit back and allow them to do? Say he gets reelected, do I think that that there's a chance of regime change if Iran went back to hitting taking oil tankers or hitting bases? Yes, I do, because election's not going to be at stake anymore.
But if they want to go after Iran, they all have to go together. None of those countries by themselves can do it.
Right.
And if they go all together, then they open Iran's hand to do what he can do, like hitting all those bases as far as they can reach.
See, I think the U.S. can remove the fundamentalist regime in Iran with very little loss of life. I don't think that is necessarily the right tactic. I'm not saying I condone that tactic, but I think that they could, because the people don't.
If they can do that, how come they haven't done it yet? Then they do it, done with it, leave those people Iranian alone, let them get on with their lives.
Because I think the government overestimates the amount of casualties, because I don't feel like they have the best numbers in terms of understanding the lack of popular support for the government. So
You're saying that
so
after
I think our
everything
government
happens,
is
Iranian will
misunderstood.
uprise. If you say if something happens, Iranian will uprise. Is that what you're saying?
I think, say we went in,
Okay.
say the U.S. goes into Iran, the people, I think, there's going to be a mixed sentiment, just like there was with killing Soleimani,
Okay.
right? right? There was mixed sentiment with that, right? Where there's part of the group that says that's good, and then there's part, he was very beloved. You know, he was.
But you know,
So-
Penny, that kind of thinking didn't work with Iraq. I mean, didn't the Bush administration assume that the Iraqi middle class was going to rise up and,
Different country though, different ideology.
But are they sectarian, are they more sectarian in Iraq than they are in Iran?
It's a point about class, not religion.
It didn't work with Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and Libya. None of these countries did any changes.
I know.
But they don't want to change, they just want to take that group out. They say United States opposition with that regime. They take that out, they don't care about anything what happens tomorrow, they don't care about 80 million Iranians die after that.
I hear that they don't care what happened, just they want to make money. They sell weapons and everything. They don't care if we go there attack. Is there any result from what we are our action or no? Just they think, okay, let's make some money, go ahead, bomb this country, that country, make
If
some
what
money.
you're saying, Penny, is correct, then they should go in there and be done with them, to leave
No,
those poor Iranians alone.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if the Iranian people don't support the government, they have protested over and over again, showing their lack of support for that government, that they want the government to be treating them differently, to be doing things differently. The government is not working for the people. And
But the government cannot work for the people. Look at all these sanctions. How can they work for the people if they are not under pressure to do that? And you see, the thing is, all these sanctions create dissatisfaction with the regime inside Iran. That's the whole purpose of it, to make people of Iran uncomfortable to rise against the government. That's the whole purpose. You know, I'll call my brother, he says, how are you doing? I say, I'm doing okay. Every month they raise their retirement money, but by the end of the month, that money will be half of what they need to spend that money.
Yeah.
Because of the currency goes down so fast. And
yeah, no, it's hyperinflation that's going on. But-
yeah,
No, I understand that, but I'm saying, but it is the regime's choice. It is. The regime had an option to work peacefully, and they're not choosing
what do you mean
that.
by that is the regime option? The only way that they can do it is just say, bend down and say, come over, you know? That's
No,
the
they-
only thing.
They had to say that they weren't going to continue producing nuclear energy. They had to quit nuclear
But
pursuits.
isn't it under the non-proliferation treaty that the right to produce feasible material for the nuclear power plants?
They had agreed to the JCPOA, and they were still violating it. They were given the money back. What about the fact that they take hostages? That's not something that you do if you're trying to...
Again, the United States is sour after 40 years about the hostages.
No, but they've done it since then. It's not like, I'm not talking about the embassy hostages.
What hostages are you talking?
You mean when they,
The journalists,
the
people
army-
walking,
You mean
Any
the army
business-
shift that they did?
They do-
Sailors.
Yeah, the sailors.
there's a wide variety of times that they've done it. Part of the money, when we gave the money back to the sanctions, part of that was to cover
They are
the
nothing, they are
hostages.
angel. You know, they are the main reason that I'm US is probably because of the situation over there. But the thing is, when I see Iranians suffering, when I see my
Yes,
brothers and sisters
yes,
are suffering,
Yes.
and you know, I called Sunday, my sister said, how are you doing? She said, I haven't left the house for 7 days. She's afraid to live in the house because of all these coronavirus things, and they
It's
don't
very
have,
out there.
all the channels that the Iran will go back channel to buy medical supply, even US has cut those off. And the US control of the financial, world financial affairs is very effective. They have cut them from everything.
Right, because the US is trying to collapse the government
Exactly.
through sanctions.
Exactly. Can they do
through
it tonight
sanctions.
to be done with it?
Yeah, I think that's the point. It's, you know, at some point, it would be great if you're going to collapse the government and if you thought that was beneficial. If you thought it were beneficial for the people.
Or
of
they're
Iran. And
using Iran.
don't protract that for decades because the people suffer. Either do it or don't, but, right, are you saying?
But if,
Yeah.
but then if the US goes in militarily, then the US is doing regime change, and that's not appropriate,
But they're doing
So-
regime change anyway, right? I mean, isn't that?
Or let's look at it this way: are you using Iran as what do you call it in English? A scarecrow to sell all those
Scapegoat.
a scarecrow or a scapegoat,
Okay.
a scapegoat. We call it Lulu in Farsi. They call it they're using that to sell all those arms to Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. They have bought so much arms that they don't know how to use it. And the operations in Yemen is completely being conducted by U.S. I mean, it's even U.S. warplanes are the ones that are conducting sorties over there. Is that what?
And what about the Houthi rebels that Iran has supported and
Oh,
armed?
Houthi rebels, Iran didn't import them over there. They are there.
Right, but Iran.
What can Saudi sit down and talk to Houthis? I mean, why can't we all get along?
I know, it would be nice. I want to know.
Why can't we all?
See, like the television shows, you're supposed to fix this in 90 minutes.
I had an hour. Where was my solution, right? World peace.
So, well, you're painted a very dark.
Bleak picture.
Believe that there is no solution out of it. The only solution is change regime in Iran.
No. I'm just saying that, like, I don't know what a solution is because we're talking about the separation between the two is far. And so how do you bring them to the table? How do you get that everybody to set aside years of differences? How do you get Iran to forgive the wrongs that happened, right? I'm not saying Iran has not been wronged by the U.S. I'm saying I think
Not only
through
US,
all
but all
the
those
years.
other Arab countries, Persian Gulf, they all supported Saddam for 8 years.
Yes.
With their chemical, Germany gave him chemical weapons, France gave him chemical weapons. I mean, my brother-in-law died as a result of the chemical weapon. You know, he was serving in the army. These are the things.
I think what it takes is, at this particular level, it takes acknowledgement. And what we're dealing with is, so we have various levels. We have the human level, and that's where we, the people, are at. And then you have, as I've noticed just from observations, the higher up it goes, it seems to be a distancing from the human level, where you have people that could come and sit in this room and talk to you as an individual. But as they tend to, it seems to move up, to be able to do whatever it is they do, it becomes a distance from whatever that is that makes you human almost, or whatever psychology we call those characteristics. Because it would almost be those things that we teach ourselves when we're young. Remember to say thank you. Remember to say I'm sorry. So whatever it is, that would be an acknowledgement. Okay, this happened to you.
Right.
But then that would be me saying that, oh, I did something wrong and I can't do that. Because then there would be the backlash of, see, we told you they were responsible for you. You see what I mean? There would be that back and forth. And because sometimes when I listen to discussions like this, and I'm just kind of listening to the patterns weaving through there, I notice things that are missing, such as, yes, there's an acknowledgement that has never happened, and in some cases won't. And then I heard you, I had wanted to address that where you were mentioning that the people need to. And what came to mind is you can have 40 million people being ruled by 1 million, and sometimes people don't understand how can that happen. When they get into your mind and convince you that you are something smaller than that, they can rule you for a lifetime.
Oh, I know.
And so those with not having that support, you know what I mean, and firing those bullets into the crowd, so to speak, it can take time to get to that place where, okay, if we don't have that support, there are enough of us to overpower it to where, yes, we can do that. Because
I think
that's sort of like what
where
it
the U.S.
took.
government think, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is, but I think it's like, okay, there are more citizens who want regime change, or maybe want a difference in the way the government operates, maybe not even full regime change. There are more of them, and so that, I think that's the mindset. But at the same time, and
The average
let's be
person
candid,
doesn't have
even
weapons
here,
either. They
even
don't have
here
any
we have-
weapons.
I mean, kind of candidly, we've got, what, about 580 people who rule this entire 300 and some odd million
Yeah.
Guthrie, right? So I'm just saying, you know.
You know, and it's almost like gotten into the mindset that this is what we can do to you, and here are examples.
Right.
And those examples are so long and so,
Yeah.
just running so deep. And you know, it's always interesting. Your discussion has been most interesting.
Yeah.
and
Thank you
intriguing
so much.
because I'm just hearing some things that are like, I'm gonna go back and some things I've seen and look at those again from a different perspective because,
Well, maybe with that, we should say thank you.
yeah.
We can continue discussion, but thank you very much.
Thank you.